Stories inform us to what is possible. Stories influence us to what is needed. And stories inspire us to what could be. Stories happen when people live their life to the fullest. These are the storytellers. Welcome to Storytellers, the program that brings you the true stories of people who have created a business that profoundly impacts their community due to a service or a product, or are in a career that has become a vocation. And when I use the word vocation, I am saying divinely inspired, or have a hobby that, because they've expanded it, it profoundly impacts, once again, the community and all the people around them. Today, I have the unique opportunity to share with you a story within a story. Well, actually, it's going to be, I'm going to tell you one story, and the gentleman, Kenny Hutchison, is going to tell you the story behind that. Today, Kenny Hutchison has allowed us some time that he has a full-time job and a family. And yet, because of something that happened a few years ago at a church service, it profoundly impacted him. And when him and his wife left that church service, he said, someone's got to tell the world about this man. And his wife said to him, why don't you, Kenny? The man he was talking about was Horatio Spafford. And today I get to speak with Kenny Hutchison, who has done something pretty darn profound. Kenny, thank you so much for giving me your time. You have a full-time job, a family, and yet you have designed this one-man play, and you actually perform it also. And I believe it's been 85 times you've done this play. Can you tell us about that?
Thank you for having me. By the way, I feel very at ease at this interview today because I'm a mailman. I've been a mailman 33 years, and I've been on this route 25 years, and you're interviewing me in a home that's on my postal route. So I'm on home territory today.
That's good.
It's funny, my wife Babette and I, we laugh, we say we were not looking for Horatio. Horatio found us. So this play sort of came about organically. I've never been in a play in my life, never done a play. But we heard the story. We've always sung the song, It Is Well With My Soul, for years. It's one of the all-time most popular songs ever. But the story behind it is fantastic and maybe even better than the song. And we heard that Spafford wrote this poem in a response to losing 4 children in a shipwreck, that's a story in and of itself. But then we also learned that he used money from the song eventually to open a hotel and then a children's home that's still open to this day. So it's just been profound for us.
And this came about in 1873, that this awful thing happened to his family. Can you tell us about that?
I can. The Spaffords were a wealthy family. They in Chicago, and he was a leading attorney, and they had decided to take a trip to do different things. They were going to Europe, and they were all going together. At the last moment, Horatio has to stay for business dealings, to wrap up a big contract in business dealings. But he wasn't going to disappoint his family. He sent them ahead on the beautiful ship Ville de Havre. Brand new ship. This story almost mirrors the Titanic, the best ship on the ocean at the time. There's a tragic sinking. They were hit by another ship. And the 4 girls were lost. Anna was saved.
His wife was saved.
He eventually got a telegram, one of the most famous telegrams of all time, that said, saved alone, what to do. So that's part
that was from his wife. She just put down
his story when she was saved.
Leaving the pronoun off, she just said saved alone.
Which answered the question, where are the 4 girls? What to do? He proceeds to go over there and gets her, and they come back to America, and there's so much more to the story when they get to America, but it is just a fantastic story that is really yet to be told. I've never met anyone that had heard the full story until we heard it August 4th, 2016. Just to me, the victory of taking that awful despair, to me, what I think is the worst that can happen to you is losing your children. And out of that despair, making something beautiful. And when they wound up opening a children's home, which no one knows about to this day. And so I started telling the story. I'd tell my friends, I'd tell people when you run into your friends at Walmart. But we have a problem in our society now, Darren. There's no place to tell anyone where it takes 10 minutes to have a conversation, because after 1 minute of speaking, my dear friends, they didn't mean to, they would look down and they go, "Oh, what a beautiful cat video."
You were speaking to my heart right now. Those electronic devices are a good tool, but they become a parasite.
Right. I kept getting more and more frustrated, and Babette, I took it out on poor sweet Babette, and I kept saying, "I want to tell people, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do?" And finally she said, "Well, why don't you just write a play?" And that's about as preposterous as telling me, "Why don't you run for president?" Because I had no background with anything. But it got on my mind. It got on my mind. Write a play. Write a play. And I started going off by myself for long periods of time. And this took months.
You didn't tell your wife that you had taken up her challenge.
Well, I didn't know I was doing it. Really, I was just reading information and gathering it, but I'd already started the process, and I didn't know it. How could I tell her?
Right, okay.
So finally, maybe after 10 or 11 months, we were on the way home from church one afternoon, and I looked at her and I said, "It's done. I've got it. I've figured in my mind who I want to sing for me and how I want to do it, and everything is done." And she lovingly said, "What is that?" And I said, "The play that you suggested I write." And she went, "What play?" She had forgotten she had told me.
Uh-huh.
And so she said, "Well, will you do it for me when we get home?" And I went, "No." The first time my wife saw the play was my first performance, and that was for 7 people at my church, the drama club. I just went and I did it for them, and halfway through they were crying. And I thought to myself, they hate this. I made people cry. And at the end, they just enveloped me and said, "We don't know really what this is or how you've done this, but you've got to start doing this." And that's the beginning of It Is Well With My Soul, the Horatio Spafford story. And I've just finished my 86th performance and waiting for more.
I need to point this out to our audience. Notice Kenny said, "I performed it for the first time in front of 7 people, and I'm halfway done with it," and they start crying. What was in his mind? They absolutely hate this. And yet, Kenny continued to the end. Please take note of this. See, people that do very profound things, it isn't a pathway led with primroses. It isn't all paved and, because they've done this great thing, everything starts working out well. It was a seeming obstacle, and yet you continue to continue. You don't know it, but this is pretty darn profound, Kenny. This is very profound. So please, I had to point that out. Go on.
Well, you can just go with the next question. I guess, done the whole interview with one question.
I noticed in this book, It Is Well With My Soul, words by Horatio Spafford and music by Philip Bliss. But over here on the right-hand side, Ville du Havre, irregular. I don't understand. What does this mean?
It took me a long time to figure that out because I know nothing about music. When I was looking at that, I even asked our song director and leaders, and they sort of looked at that and they said, "I'll get back to you on it." That's sort of, you hear people tell you that all the time. "I'll get back to you on that." Nobody ever did. But I was reading one night, and it was describing that the music is so profound. A lot of people like to play it on the organ or just the music. If you play the music without the song, it's not called It Is Well With My Soul. It's called the Ville du Havre, which was the name of the ship
that went down.
Sank. And for some reason that they wanted to keep, because this was a Titanic-like story. Still, that sinking is about like the 11th or 12th most lives lost in American shipwrecks. And so they wanted to keep the ship name alive. So if you play it without the words to it, actually you're supposed to call it the Wildehar, or the tribute.
Okay, tell me this. Tell us, share with us, some pretty profound things that have happened in one of, or a couple of those 86 performances, I'm sure, because the first performance, you got 7 people crying, they're in a drama club, it shouldn't have been a phase them, so you're affecting people that are professionals because they're in a drama club. Tell us some neat things that have happened during those 86 performances.
This is beyond explaining, because like I said, I'm a mailman. I'm not a counselor. I didn't write this to, heal people. It was just I wanted to hear a story. But out of this, we've been to prisons, we've been to the rescue mission, we've been to addiction centers, we've been to backyards, we've been to basically, I'll go anywhere, anytime, any place to get this story out. And afterwards, it never fails. Someone comes up and said, I've lost children. I'm going through a divorce. I'm alone. I'm in despair. And I'm really not professional enough to say, well, you need to do this, this, and this. But I'm able to look them in the eye and say, I care. I will listen. And a lot of times that's all people want, just someone to listen to.
Has anything happened, those are pretty profound things to happen, that you were able to make people feel like they're not alone. But has anything else ever happened that has put you back on your heels?
Well, are you ready for this? You never know what's going to happen in a live performance. I have learned that in this 86 performances. You think everything is just so crisp and benign. Broken microphones, lights, telephones going off right in the middle. I now understand why performers don't like that, because it throws you completely off. But I'm sort of a unique person. I'm not a hugger. You've met people that are huggers, right? So I'm not. I'll shake hands and everything, but I'm not a big hugger, greeter person. Well, in my performance, there's one part where Horatio is just, he's holding his fist up, and literally he's lost more children after the first 4, and he's just screaming at God, why? Why? And I stand there for just total silence for about 30 seconds. Well, I was doing that, and I was at that point in one performance, and I felt the most warm, soothing sensation I'd ever felt. And I prayed, I went, Lord, I've never felt this close to you before. Thank you, I said, but I need my concentration. I need to go on. And as I opened my eyes, I realized it wasn't the Lord, Darren. A lady had become so overcome in the performance, she got up, came all the way to the stage.
Oh, no.
And had enveloped me with her love. I mean, not a beside you hug. I mean, my wife said all she could see of me was my little eyes like headlights. And it almost threw me for a loop. I didn't stop. I didn't get out of care. I just whispered to her, ma'am, I'll talk to you about this afterwards. Let me get you in a chair. And afterwards, my wife said it sort of looked like Horatio and the lady were dancing. So I got her over to her chair and seated, and then turned around and kept going. But I learned from that, you never know what's going to happen in a live performance.
You put her in the moment. Knowing that, has other things happened in your plays that the people that were the audience mistook them for being there with Horatio?
If you're able to come and listen, I never say dates. I never really give the names of the city. They're all Chicago people, because I want people to think this just happened. It's right here, and they're on the right on the edge of being an actual part of the story, and it works. Afterwards, some people try to come and clarify it. Now, how old are you? And I remind them, I said, I'm Ken. I'm dressed as Horatio. But it is a neat thing, because it's just sort of a transformation takes place, and people really get into this. Is more than an informational story. To me, this is just something to inspire someone with, and to just let them know the things that are happening in your life have always happened, and they always will happen, unfortunately.
This is like a modern day story of Job from the book of Job. Would you agree?
unbelievable. In my play, I just touch on some of the things that happened to the Spafford family. I would need hours to elaborate. They lost most of their possessions and money in the Great Chicago Fire.
Okay.
And yet they completely rebounded from that. Had a stillborn child. Then lost 4 children. Then lost another son to scarlet fever. And on top of that, you hate to even hear this, their church asked them to leave.
Why?
This is a church they helped found, but at that time they believed if bad things happened to people, well then they must have offended God, they've been cursed, and this is their punishment, so we can't allow them to taint our church. So they asked them to either openly confess or leave, which I think maybe even crushed them as much as losing children, because they helped start this church and they wound up leaving that church. So even today, people go through church problems, issues, and it's very, very painful if you've been in a church a long time. But that happened to them, and then other things. But with every terrible thing that happened, eventually they used it for good.
They went on to Israel and started a colony. Can you tell us about that?
They did. From the misery of leaving their church, like I said, if that would have never happened, they would have never went to Israel. They moved with a small group of people to the city of Jerusalem. Spafford had a deep love for Jerusalem, a deep love for Bible prophecy. He wanted to study there and go there. They went there, eventually purchased a small house, turned it into a hostel where people could come and stay for a few days and go. And eventually it grew into the 4-star American Colony Hotel, which today has original copies of the song It Is Well With My Soul, pictures of the Spaffords, and it sort of is the unofficial museum for the It Is Well With My Soul.
Now, they opened this in the late 1800s, and here it is, it's 2020, and we're still talking about it, and it's still open and operating. Who took over when him and his wife passed on?
Other members of the Spafford family, the daughters, the grandsons, and everything, they kept it in their home really until the early 70s, where it was purchased by a chain, but the Spaffords are still involved with that. But the beautiful thing was, right after World War I and in the 20s, they purchased another building, called it the Spafford's Children's Home, which is absolutely still open today, still feeding, still clothing, still ministering to anyone, not just quote-unquote Christian children or children. If you're in need, they have a place for you at the children's home. And last year they helped 50,000 children.
And that's both Muslim, Christian, Jewish?
Mm-hmm. I want people to know this. The Spaffords were not missionaries. I love missionaries. We all love missionaries. But they were people that had a work, and everything that they worked, whether he was a lawyer or with the hotel or the children's home, it has a Christian influence, because he believed what you were carried over in being a Christian. You just were not a Christian in your church. So they were not missionaries, but their plea, they said, we will help anyone. We treat people with dignity, honor, and respect, no matter what you believe or anything. You walk through our door, and we would treat you like we think Jesus would treat you. And that was that they help anyone.
Can you tell us about some significant historical events in connection with that colony? What I'm looking for is, we're talking the Middle East. Muslim, Jewish, Christian. So there's 3 factions that don't necessarily get together. Share what has happened historically because of that colony.
Well, I'll tell you what's amazing, and you start hearing these stories and you go, what? In World War I, they asked the Spaffords if they could turn the American Colony Hotel into the American Colony Hospital. Not a doctor, not a nurse on staff. And Horatio says, well, Horatio had already passed away, really. The other Spafford said, well, of course we would. And you go, just on the turning of a dime right there, they turned it into a hospital, which became one of the finest hospitals in the Mideast, staffed with all volunteer doctors, many from all over the world, Christian doctors. They put the call out, and it became a hospital, but served both. Served the wounded soldiers
World
of
War
both
I.
in World War One. And really the surrender of World War One was used with a bed sheet from the American Colony Hotel tied onto a stick and given to the mayor of Jerusalem. And that flag is still in the Imperial War Museum of Britain today. World War II, about the same thing happened. It was used as a neutral site for meetings to feed people. They organized soup kitchens. The same with the Israeli-Palestinian wars. It was considered neutral territory. They aided people with both sides. Once they got there, they considered to have sanctuary. A lot of the meetings through the years between Israeli and Palestinians have been traditionally in the courtyard of the American Colony Hotel. 4 or 5 presidents have stayed there, and just a story beyond stories. When you hear it, you go, how do things like this happen?
This all comes from a song written in the late 1800s. It is well with my soul. And just the domino effect. And it's really profound. And this interview was supposed to take place back in March, and due to everything that's happened, we've had to put it off, and today it has finally happened. And I was talking to Kenny last night on the phone, and he said, "Did you see the Tennessean just last week?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And they had a survey of Christian music, and they had 11 top Christian musics, and you told me that 10 of them were contemporary.
I brought the list today, and it's amazing because I love the songs that are on it, and like 9 of the 11 are 3 years or less and written. Some of them written this year, and they're beautiful. They're amazing. But right there at the top,
number one, It Is Well With My Soul.
73 is timeless. It's beautiful. It's as fresh today as the day Horatio penned the poem.
I've asked you, I gave you a big hint yesterday, and you showed up with the interview with something special. And what I'm going to ask you to do, would you please, during this interview, get in period dress that you normally do, and perform the most important part in your mind of this one-man play? Would you do that for us?
It'll be hard to get to the most important one. I've selected sort of a light-hearted moment where he's talking about his daughters. And I think maybe to Horatio that might have been the most important part.
Okay.
He was a family man. Can I share with you about our 4 girls? We have 4 absolutely beautiful, blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girls that look just like my dear wife, Anna. Amen? Sir, you said that a little too quick. You don't want them to favor me at all? Well, I agree with you. They were 4 beautiful ladies. Let's see now. It was Anna, Maggie, Elizabeth, and our 2-year-old Tessie. Now, most people want to know why I put Tessie up here. It's because she had me wrapped around her little finger, and I carried her just about everywhere we went. So she always said she was the tallest. Now, here's what's odd. Our home, the Spafford home, was said to be full of curls and giggles. Do you know why? Most of them were at my expense, because I had just been raised with boys and cousins and ill-mannered fellas around the neighborhood. I had no idea at all what life had in store with me living with 5 women. There were many a day that I was late to work because I was standing in the hallway with a lukewarm pan of water and a straight edge attempting to shave, yikes, because that last little girl was working on that last little curl. And you know what? I didn't mind it at all. I didn't. Many a day I came home, and after doing $1 million land deals, do you know what I would do? I would wind up in a side room at too small of a table, sitting in too small of a chair, playing and drinking imaginary tea with the girls. And I listened to talks of ball gowns and cotillions and boys and hairdos. And I loved that also. I loved every minute of it. Can you guess what the girls' favorite thing to do was? What? Dress up, play house, make up? Well, some of y'all are very, very close. Their favorite thing to do, they would dress up and they would get their hair done just so. And then they would take Dad and they would take their little shoes off. And the next thing you know, they would step on my feet and away we would go all around the room, dancing the afternoon away, with Anna right behind me saying, "Watch the lamps, watch the curtains." Oh, we had plans. We knew who we were going to introduce those girls to. We know what schools they were going to attend. We have even picked a couple of homes around the corner for them to purchase and live near us. We had plans, didn't we? We all do.